CQ, CQ, CQ. This is Kilo 5 Charlie Lima Mike, and you are listening to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. My name is Curtis, Kilo 5 Charlie Lima Mike, and I will be your host for this episode. It's pretty much like every other episode. In the last episode, we pretty well wrapped up our emergency preparedness mini-series. This week, I'm going to kind of fly by the seat of my pants. You know, this last week has been very, very weird for some strange reason. We've had a lot of changes in our house. We've had a lot of issues at work, and here it is now, Saturday, and I have to have this recorded by tomorrow, by Sunday, and I just haven't had the drive to do a lot of things. It's one of those weeks, I guess. I got a lot going on and not enough time to do it, but you know what I mean. So I'm just kind of going by the seat of my pants. If this episode really turns out bad, guys, gals, I am so sorry. If it turns out great, then, or if it turns out at least good, then, you know, that's cool. I'm glad. Show notes are not going to be like they normally are for this episode, as you can tell. I am going to do my best to give at least some pointers or something like that with what I say here. So, anyways, I guess you probably want to know what the topic is for this week. Well, the topic for this week, we're going to go with, I guess I could do like the any, meeny, miny, mo thing, you know? No, seriously. The topic for this episode is going to be nets. Okay, we've talked about nets a little bit in the past. I know I've talked about it on my blog before, sometime last year. I don't even remember off the top of my head. But we've talked about nets before, and we kind of touched on them a little bit, and I believe podcast episode number 9, I want to say, where we talked about a directed net and an indirect net, and formal, informal net, rag chew net, all that good stuff. But anyways, we're going to talk about nets today. So, first off, let's talk a little bit about the different kinds of nets. The first kind of nets that we're going to talk about is a formal net. A formal net is one like you would have in a races net or a skywarn net, a major disaster. Those type of things would be a formal net. A formal net is a net where there's one person that's in charge of the frequency, which is the net control. That person has ultimate say-so as anything that happens on that frequency, and you, as a participator of that net, unless granted your net control, have to ask permission before you talk. It's kind of like we used the example in episode number 9, like an air traffic controller. You know, the airplanes that are in the sky have to listen to the air traffic controller, or people could get seriously hurt. You know, the air traffic controller is responsible for that plane, you know, telling it which direction to go, how high to go, how fast to go, all that good stuff. And it's that person's responsibility to make sure that they tell the planes and the pilots the right directions to go. Otherwise, something bad happens, or could happen at the very least. So, with a formal net, normally it's going to be in a high-stress situation, whether that be a storm coming through, which I actually had one here not too long ago. We actually had one, I want to say Tuesday night. Tuesday night we had a storm come through in my area, and it was the first major storm that my 2 new girls have gone through with us. And it was a very what's the word I'm looking for? A very learning experience. That's not the word I'm looking for, but that's what I'm going to use. And very enlightening, I guess, maybe would be the word I'm looking for. The younger of the two new girls, she does not like storms. She hates them with a passion, pretty much. And this one just kind of blew up on us, and I'm sitting there, we're painting our wall in our dining room, and I get the alert of a storm coming up. And in our county, it's an automatic thing where when our county is put under warning, that we automatically bring up a Skywarn net. So I turn on my radio, and sure enough, one is starting up. So I check into it, and I'm looking out the window, and I'm still seeing half the sky is like blue and beautiful, and you can see the sun, and the other half of the sky is like dark clouds. It was actually kind of cool. But anyways, I'm sitting there listening to it. I don't have anything to report, so I keep my mouth shut, and I'm painting on the storms. And all of a sudden, I hear the National Weather Service come across our frequency, and they say, "Yeah, we have our radar is indicating rotation in the Godley area." Well, the Godley area is about 6-7 miles north of where I live at, and so I look at my wife, and she looks at me, and I'm like, "Okay, well, let me go check this out." So I grab my handheld. I'm walking out in the front yard, and where we live up on top of this hill, and you have a view pretty much, like 300 degrees from our house. You can see pretty much. There's one little spot that you can't see that you gotta kind of move, but you could pretty much have a 360 view if you move around a little bit. Anyways, I walk down to the front of our property, and I look up north, and there's this like humongous cloud formation, and I'm sitting there looking at it a little bit, and it kind of wiggles and jiggles a little bit, and I was like, okay, well, that looks like a forming of a wall cloud. Well, sure enough, it probably was. And I was looking at the clouds, and I saw some rotation, so I reported it, like a good spotter does. So we got put under a tornado warning because of what I saw and what was confirmed by 2 other spotters. So we were put on a tornado warning. So I'm starting to walk back up to my house and call inside and tell my wife to get the kids in our safe area. And they do, and I'm outside looking at the storm, and my wife and 5 kids are in our closet. Later I found out that they were scared to death, and I'm standing outside playing. Good ham radio operator, not so good dad, I guess, maybe. But I was doing my best to keep them safe and doing my best to keep everybody else safe. Anyways, we're kind of getting off the little topic here. So, back to nets, okay? The formal net one, like it says, formal. You're going to be having, directed traffic. You have to ask permission to do stuff. If you want to talk to your best friend about something, you can't do it on the frequency that you're on unless it has something to do with what's going on. Guys, y'all, I am so sorry. I have the major yawns today, and I don't know why. Well, it could be something because I hadn't been sleeping very well, but we're not going to get into that. I gotten off topic enough on this episode as it is. Anyways, we talked about formal nets. Let's talk about informal nets. Informal nets, of course, is just pretty much just the opposite, and pretty much what you would think they would be. Informal. You don't have to ask permission to talk. You can, just say, call in the person directly, whoever you're looking for or want to talk to, you can talk to them. You don't have to go through net control. There's still somebody that's a net control, so to speak, that will be in charge, and that can make the net formal if that is needed. But it's kind of just like a bunch of people getting together for one common goal. That's the way a formal net or an informal net is. So that's pretty much it. Formal, informal, direct, indirect, tomato, tomato. Basically, that's the way it is. There is other things like, there's differences between a VHF UHF net and a HF net. The VHF and UHF net are going to be more, probably a little bit more structured. They're going to have clear readability with anything, because with the HF side of things, you might have two people that are listening to it and can hear the net going on, but only one of them can get back to the net control station. You might have the person that's net control maybe in Virginia, and one person that's in Texas, and one person's in Oklahoma, and the only person in Oklahoma can be heard by the guy in that's running net control. But both guys, Texas and Oklahoma, can hear the net. So, you have to kind of go with third party or relays. If somebody else can hear the person in Texas and the net control can't, then that person in Texas might talk to somebody in Michigan or something, or Canada or wherever, and relay that information to the net control. You can do that somewhat with the HF-UHF, but it's not common practice, I guess you could say. Let's see, what else about nets? Well, probably, okay, let's look about maybe net types. Okay, we have several different types of nets, I guess. Maybe you have the formal and the informal, but each of these types of nets are going to be maybe subparts of that, or the direct, indirect, formal, informal type thing can be used to, or those are what these are used in. Something like that. I'm not sure exactly what I'm trying to say. It's driving me crazy. Anyways, types of nets. You have your rag chew nets. Now, your rag chew nets could also be like your club sponsored nets. They could be nets like you run a weekly net in your club, and you just kind of get together for announcements and whatnot. This can be a formal net. It normally is. It can have an informal side to it as well. It could have it could be just trying to sell radio gear. You might have a swap meet net. I've had stuff like that before. It could have a topic of discussion. There's been that kind of things before. Let's see. Another type of nets is a skyward net or a weather net. Like we were talking about just a minute ago. This can be both the formal and the informal, and a lot of times is both during the same net. Sometimes it starts out as an informal net, or what's called a standby net is also, where there's just kind of people just kind of hanging out, but they're already checked in, and then something happens, or the weather starts rolling in or whatever, and it goes to formal, and then after it's all done and stuff, it might go back to informal, or it might just totally shut down altogether. ARES, you also use nets in the Amateur Radio Emergency Services. You use nets on there. The ARES, you do stuff like for the Red Cross or the Salvation Army. This is, you use the ARES flag, or you work under the ARES flag after an event happens, like a disaster or something like that. In the aftermath, you're working under the ARES flag. You also do it for parades or shows, walkathons, stuff like that. Public service events. Again, this could be a directed net, or it could be an indirect net, or it could be a mixture of both. These nets could, for a Aries event, for whatever that is, could be on a simplex frequency, could be on a repeater. Just kind of pick and choose, I guess you could say. On the flip side of that is the RACES net, or the Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Services. Yeah, try saying that 5 times fast. The RACES side of things is more of the when it's happening in your face type thing. When the storm is coming through, when the tornado is hitting, when the the bomb went off, and shortly thereafter, that's when you're going to be in the RACES. RACES is going to be working affiliated with FEMA or your local emergency management office. The RACES is normally activated by the emergency manager for the county or the city, or whatever level you're working on. Most times it's going to be a city or county, and you may have somebody that is appointed as your RACES director or RACES liaison. Normally each city has one. You also have one for Aries, like I said before, that's appointed through the ARRL. But your RACES works with your local government. And actually here last week, I was asked to take on this position for the county that I work in. So anyways, RACES has the same things. You can use the formal net or the informal net. Most time it's formal nets. However, it goes a little bit deeper into the different types of nets, in meaning that you have a standby, or you could have a standby net for like people that are waiting to be assigned something, or after an event or something like that, you might have a net where it's just for people that are standing by. And this could be a good training for net controls as well. You have an incident command system standby net, which is kind of like a if you've taken the NIMS classes, and you've heard, I'm sure, of the different branches of the NIMS incident command system. You have your commands, you have your logistics, you have your safety, you have your fire and police and EMS, and all the different branches that go underneath the IC, the incident commander, or the incident command team. And in RACES, you're kind of lumped in with that incident command team. And there's also command nets, which are sometimes used by like your club leaders or your RACES leaders, or whichever type of net you're on might have a separate net or a separate frequency that they talk on, where it's just like the quote-unquote command staff. There are, I'm sure other types of nets that you can have, but those are pretty much the major ones. There are things like traffic nets, where you do like the national traffic system, which I need to make a note that I'm going to do a podcast on that here pretty soon, so stick around if you're interested in that. But anyways, the national traffic system has nets that pass traffic back and forth, different things. So, anyways, let's see, what is next? Let's see, what else to do about nets. One of the things that I'm always telling my dispatchers when I train is to practice listening, and that really goes hand in hand with amateur radio too, as well as, especially during nets. You always want to listen to what's going on. You always want to know what's going on. And, not only so that you know what's going on, but so that you don't have to ask the same question over and waste people's time. So, while you're on the net, if you don't have anything to say, just don't say it. If you don't have something that's reportable, don't report it. Listen to what level the net control is looking for, and if your conditions don't meet that criteria in a weather net, then don't say anything. Something else in nets are announcements, or let's see, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like my brain just like totally shut down, kind of, sort of. Like instructions, or net instructions, or net announcements. You want to have these. You want to make sure you listen to these, and that's just kind of like, like if it's a Skywar net, where the storm is. What criteria are you wanting reported if you're net control. Things like you might have an announcement on where rehab is, where you can sit down and relax a little bit if you're when you get relief from the position that you're standing in. Several things. But again, this all comes back to listening. If you don't listen, you don't hear these things. So let's see what else. How about tactical call signs? Tactical call signs are things kind of like, let's say you have 2 emergency shelters that are running to house people that have been displaced because of weather, or because of a earthquake, or whatever. You have an operator that's going to be at you have shelter 1, you have shelter 2, you have operators at each of them, and you might have 2 of them there per shift. One to talk on the radio, one to write things down, and then there'll also be 2 in case they need to go to the restroom, or they need to get something to eat, or they need to just get up and walk around. Whatever the reason may be, you have 2 of them there. Well, rather than the net control having to remember, okay, I have person A and B at shelter 1, and I have station Y and Z, or operator Y and Z at shelter 2. You can just go shelter 2 from net control, or shelter 1 from net control. And then you don't have to remember which call sign is actually there. And even if you do have what call sign is there, if you have one person that's on a bathroom break or something, and you call them, then you'd be calling them directly rather than calling the shelter, and they might not actually be there anymore, or be tied up or whatever, and the other station be there and not hear somebody else's call sign because they're not used to listening for that call sign. So tactical call signs are good. Again, it's just kind of a general name of where you're working. It might be shelter 1, it might be EOC, it might be station 3, or whatever, or even like Red Cross. That's a tactical call sign. So there's a bunch of stuff with nets, and I probably didn't cover everything as far as nets go. I'm trying to think of pretty much anything I can think of, and unfortunately this is not a very organized episode, and again, I apologize for that. Like I said in the beginning, this week has just been very weird, and I haven't really had the drive to sit down and work on this, or sit down and work on much anything really, other than what I had to do at home, either with my kids. We got new bikes for them yesterday, and that's what I did after work, was put them together and help them outside ride their bikes. And the day before that, we had, I think we put in a kitchen sink or something, or we were going to put in a kitchen sink or something. But anyways, I've been extremely busy with my honey-do list here the past couple weeks, and hopefully next week will not be this way. I hope, but we'll see. I promise, guys, I'm going to try harder next time, even if my my time is limited. So, anyways, that's all I have today. I'm not going to have an amateur radio club spotlight. So, I guess we'll just end it here. And I want to say thank you for each of y'all for coming by and listening to the podcast. And I guess I will say just 73, and until next time. This is K5CLM, and I'll be signing off. Hey everybody, once again I'd like to say thank you for listening to this episode of the Everything Ham Radio podcast. If you like what you heard here, head on over to our website. There's lots of information there that I'm sure you're going to love. You can find it at everythinghamradio.com. While you're there, subscribe to get emails on when I publish a new post or a new podcast. You can click on the subscribe button at the top of the page, or go there directly at everythinghamradio.com/subscribe. Also, like me on Facebook at facebook.com/everythinghamradio, and follow me on Twitter at K5CLM. Also, I would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe to this podcast, like it, share it with your friends, help me spread the word. So until next time, 73.